So how do you draw icons in a way that anybody can do to make it nice and easy? So I'm Marcus, I'm a visual facilitator. I've been doing it for 7 years, and in that time I've trained thousands of people how to use visual thinking, even if they have absolutely zero drawing ability. And one of the core things we use in visual facilitation or visual thinking is icons. So how do you make this nice and easy? So I'm going to demo for you a little bit, then I'm going to give you some to practice as well. So the place we have to start is when we're thinking visually and want to draw nice and simple, we always want to come back to our simple basic shapes. So our square, our circle, and our triangle. I just want you to keep these in mind as we go through these. These are like the building blocks so we can create anything out of. So how can we use these to make icons more easy to draw? Well, let's first go over what you shouldn't do. So most people, when they are trying to draw, they default to what's called construction drawing. So let me show you what that is. I'm going to draw a simple bomb here. So what you do in contour drawing is you go around the outside of the shapes, you're kind of drawing the silhouette, and then you come back in and you fill in the parts in the middle. Now this seems like the kind of obvious way to draw, but it's actually much, much harder, because what you have to do is basically picture in your mind that perfect silhouette of what that object or item is, whatever you're trying to draw, and you have to be able to visualize that really clearly, and then you have to be really accurate in the way that you draw those all together. So we want to avoid this method called contour drawing, and instead we want to use a method called construction drawing. So what is that? That's when we look at an object or an object that we're imagining, and we break it down into its simple shapes. So we've got a circle here, we've got a square or a rectangle, and we've got a squiggly line. So that's the first thing you want to do. Think what basic shapes make up this icon. And then what you can do is start from the biggest shape first and work your way down. So I'm going to start with that circle here, add that square on, and because I've got that circle, I can make a judgment about how big this square should be. So I'm going to draw that square on, add my squiggly line, and we're good to go. So that's the method of construction drawing, where we're breaking it down into its simple, basic shapes first, and then we're building them out of those basic shapes. Now, this works really nicely for something like the bomb because it's really clear what those basic shapes are. We can see them very clearly. But what about if we're drawing something a bit more complicated where the basic shapes aren't quite as clear? Let's say we're drawing a boat. So I'll draw a simple boat in here. We've got our water, the base of the boat, and our sail and our mast. So that's a simple drawing of a boat. Now we can't really see any clear squares, circles, or triangles in this. So what's the approach we want to take here? How do we tackle this? Well, what we want to do is we want to think, how can you get to these shapes through using these basic shapes? So let me show you what I mean. So we've got this water at the bottom here. That's basically, some letter C's on its side. We've got this base of the boat here, and we can think of that as basically a rectangle plus a triangle where we've curved that corner edge. And then we've got this sail, which we can think of as a square with the sides curved. So even if we can't see basic shapes completely, we want to think, how can I get to these through using your basic shapes? I'm just going to grab another pen. This one's running low. All right, got a new pen. We're all good. So once you've identified what these kind of basic shapes are, what your starting point is, you can basically put them all together. And you want to think in basic shapes the entire time. All right, got a new pen. We're all good to go. So once you're here and you've got your basic shapes identified, you want to think in these basic shapes as you draw. So if I'm to redraw this boat, I'm going to start with the water first since that's in front. So if you've got an object in front, like the water here, starting with that first is a good way to go. Otherwise, the biggest shape. So I'm going to start with that water, thinking of those sea curves, okay? And then onto the base of the boat, I'm thinking about that rectangle, going into that triangle with a curve. And then for that sail, I'm thinking about that curved square. And then for the mast, we've got a simple line. And there we have it. So this is the basic principle here. You want to think in terms of these basic shapes, and it makes it so much easier to draw. This is kind of like the cheat code to drawing, in my opinion. Once you can see in these basic shapes and build objects out of them, it really makes it much easier to look at even very complex things and simplify it down into something that you can visualize. All right, let's move on to some challenges for you now. So we've got a simple mountain up here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to flash this up on the screen. I want you to pause the video and have a go at breaking this down into its basic shapes and basically redrawing this icon. Then hit play on the video and watch me go through it to check your work. All right, so you've got your version drawn. Let's go through the way I would do this. Now, one thing I want to point out, as long as it looks roughly like a mountain, it doesn't matter if you use the exact same process. As long as you get to the end result, that's all we're looking for. So the mountain here, nice and simple one to start. We're basically thinking in two triangles for our mountains. And then we've got these zigzag strokes, and we've got these lines to do a little bit of shading in there. So let's put it all together. Starting by thinking of those two triangles there, adding my zigzags from the peaks, and then just adding some lines to show that shadow. All right, now the mountain's out of the way. The second one we're going to do is going to be the present. So again, I'm going to flash this up on the screen larger, pause the video and have a go at breaking it down into its basic shapes and redrawing the icon. All right, let's take a look at how we can break this down. So a pretty simple one here. Again, we've got basically a square and we've just got a cross going through the middle for this bit. And then for the loops at the top, we can just think of these as some uneven circles. So putting it all together, starting with the biggest shape, which is the square, putting our cross through, and we can add some shading on if you've got a gray pen. And that is the present. So for number 3, we have a classic light bulb. Once again, I'm going to put this up on screen large, break it down into its basic shapes, and rebuild it to recreate this icon. All right, so let's take a look at the light bulb now that you've drawn it. You better have drawn it, by the way. We're going to look with the biggest first, and we've got a simple circle here. We've got this square at the bottom here, which we can just round out the bottom there. And then we can think by actually using letters for these next parts, since they're quite clear letters. We can think of it as we've got a Z here for that part through the base, and we've got this M here for the filament. So let's put these all together again. We've got our circle for the bulb, U for the base, Z, and M. This is a particularly special icon, if you like, because you can create it using the letters U, Z, M, and O. So Utzmo, and that is actually the title of this book here, Utzmo, Thinking with Your Pen, which is a fantastic book written by Martin Hausmann, who created the vocabulary method, which is the method we teach. It's my opinion the easiest, fastest way to learn visual thinking. And this is a fantastic book. This is like a Bible on all the different ways you can use visual thinking and visual facilitation. It's really wide, covers loads of different topics, whereas a lot of other books tend to just focus on one. There are other great, fantastic books out there, but this one is one that I find myself coming back to again and again, no matter how long I've done this for. So if you want a great book to read, check out Utzmo. If you want more recommendations, let me know. I'll do a video. For number 4, we've got something a little bit more challenging. We've got the telescope. So you know the drill at this point. I'm going to flash it up, break it down into its basic shapes, and redraw. All right, so we've got the telescope here. Let's break it down. How can we do this? We've got this big kind of barrel of the telescope, and I'm going to think of that as just a rectangle that just gets slightly bigger as it goes to one side. I've exaggerated that a little bit here so you can see it. Just a rectangle that gets slightly bigger. And what we're going to build on top of this is we're going to take this end here and we're just going to curve it. So I'm going to curve at that end and I'm going to add a couple more curves along here. Okay? And then for the end of our telescope, we basically got an oval. For the feet, we've got 3 lines, and for the ground, we've just got a curve. And for the base, we've got a line. So let's put that together. So thinking about this rectangle that gets slightly bigger, I'm going to draw those 2 lines in. I'm then going to add that curve onto the ends and those 2 more curves. I'm going to add that oval, add that line, and then I'm going to add those lines for the feet and that line for the ground. And you can see we've got a much longer telescope here. If you find things like that happen, don't worry about it. As long as it is still identifiable as a telescope, that's all that matters. So number 5, we've got a bit of a tricky one here. We've got the cactus. You know the drill. I'll flash it up, recreate it, then hit play again. So we've got this cactus here, and people can find things like this more challenging because we've got quite a lot of details here and also quite a lot of wavy lines. So things that are kind of natural, things like plants, people, they all tend to be much more wavy, have much more curves, and this can throw people off. But again, we want to go back and think in really simple shapes. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this main section of the cactus here, and we're just going to think of this as a rectangle, but we're going to just add a bit of curve onto it and a bit of wobbliness. Okay, so that's our kind of main part there. Then for the arms, we're again thinking in essentially rectangles where we have added some curviness into them. So we're taking these and we're making just a little bit more kind of curvy and a bit more blobby to get that effect. Our basic line at the bottom here, just a simple curve. And for the little details, we've just got some dashes there. So let's draw this again. So I'm going to start at the bottom here. I'm going to draw that base of the cactus in. And then I'm going to move out and do a little curvy line up and round for that first arm there. I'm going to go up. I'm going to come down. Then I'm going to go into that second arm here. And then just connect these up. Add the line in and then adding those details on last. So when you see a lot of details like this, you want to really make sure that what you are doing is looking at the structure underneath. So people see something with all this, they go, I can't do that. You absolutely can. All you have to do is look past the details into the big underlying structure, then come back and add the details on top. And just some shading to finish this off. If you have a shadow pen, it's really simple and fast to do once you know how, and it makes everything look a lot better. Also gives it some more pop, separates it from the page, so it makes it more readable too. All right, so that's it. That's how you can make icons easy and simple to draw. It really doesn't take much practice to get really proficient at this. A few icons is all you really need to do. If you'd like some more techniques, tutorials, lessons on how to use visual thinking, you can head to our blog. We've got free tutorials up there. Otherwise, that's it from me. Any questions at all, just ask them in the comments below. Cheers.